The Nameless Creek, from the book Adventures in the Wilderness by H. Murray. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This recording is by Michelle Fry, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in May 2020. The Nameless Creek. It was 5 o'clock in the afternoon when, after 3 hours of constant struggle with the current, we burst our way through a mass of alder bushes and marsh grass, and behold, the lake lay before us. Wet from head to foot, panting from my recent exertion, having eaten nothing since 7 in the morning, and weary from 10 hours' steady toil, I felt neither weariness nor hunger as I gazed upon the scene. Shut in on all sides by mountains, mirrored from base to summit in its placid bosom, bordered here with fresh green grass, and there with reaches of golden sand, and again with patches of lilies, whose fragrance, mingled with the scent of balsam and pine, filled the air, the lake reposed unruffled and serene. I know of nothing which carries the mind so far back toward the creative period as to stand on the shore of such a sheet of water, knowing that as you behold it, so has it been for ages. The water which laves your feet is the same as that which flowed when the springs which fed it were first uncapped. No rude axe has smitten the forests which grow upon the mountains. Even the grass at your side is as the parent spire, which he who ordereth all commands to bring forth seed after its kind. All around you is as it was in the beginning. I know not how long I should thus have stood musing, but for the motion of John's, which broke the chain of thought, and brought my mind back to the practical realization that we were wet, hungry, and tired. In the middle of the lake was a large flat rock, rising some 2 feet above the surface of the water. Stepping noiselessly into our boat, we paddled to the rock, and wringing our dripping garments, stretched ourselves at full length upon it to dry. Oh, the pleasant sensation of warmth which that hard couch, to which the sun had given a genial heat, communicated to us! Never was bed of eider down so welcome to royal limbs as was that granite ledge to ours. What luxury to lie and watch the vapor roll up from your wet garments, while the warm rock gave out its heat to your chilled body. In an hour we were dry, at least comparatively so, and we held a council. Our commissariat was getting rather low. Our stores, spread upon the rock, amounted to the following: 2 pounds of pork, 6 pounds of flour, 4 measures of coffee, 1/2 pound of tea. John estimated that this would last us 3 days, if I had ordinary success with the rod. "But what are we to do tonight?" I exclaimed. "We have neither trout nor venison, and I am hungry enough to eat those 2 pounds of pork alone, if I once get fairly at it. And there goes the sun back of the tree-tops now." "Well, unstrap your rod and select your flies," responded he, "and we will see what we can find. I don't mean to have you wrap yourself around that piece of pork tonight, anyway." I did as requested. For the tail fly I noosed on a brown hackle, above it I tied a killer, and for the dapper I hitched on a white moth. Taking the bow seat, John paddled straight for the west shore of the lake, and the light boat, cutting its way through lily pads, shot into a narrow aperture overhung with bushes and tangled grass, and I saw a sight I never shall forget. We had entered the inlet of the lake, a stream some 20 feet in width, whose waters were dark and sluggish. The setting sun yet poured its radiance through the overhanging pines, flecking the tide with crimson patches, and crossing it here and there with golden lanes. Up this stream, flecked with gold and bordered with lilies as far as the eye could reach, the air was literally full of jumping trout. From amid lily pads, from under the overhanging grass, and in the bright radiance poured along the middle of the stream, the speckled beauties were launching themselves. Here a little fellow would cut his tiny furrow along the surface after a fluttering gnat. There a larger one, with quivering fin and open mouth, would fling himself high into the air in a brave attempt to seize a passing moth, and again a 2-pounder, like a miniature porpoise, would lazily rise to the surface, roll up his golden side, and flinging his broad tail upward, with a splash disappear. Casting loose my flies and uncoiling my leader, I made ready to cast. But John, unmindful or regardless of the motion, kept the even sweep of his stroke. Round tufted banks, under overhanging pines, and through tangled lily pads we passed, and at every turn and up every stretch of water the same sight presented itself. At length, sweeping sharply round a curve, John suddenly reversed his paddle and checked the boat so that the bow stood upon the very rim of a pool some 40 feet across. Dark and gloomy it lay, with its surface as smooth as though no ripple had ever crossed it. No one would have guessed that beneath the tranquil surface lay life and sport. Adjusting myself firmly on my narrow seat, untangling the snells and gathering up my leader, I flung the flies into mid-air and launched them out over the pool. The moment their feathery forms had specked the water, a single gleam of yellow light flashed up from the dark depth, and a trout, closing his mouth upon the brown hackle, darted downward. I struck, and I had him. A small trout he proved to be, of only some half-pound weight. After having passed him over to John to be disentangled, I again launched the flies out, which, pausing a moment in mid-air as the straightened line brought them up, began slowly to settle down. But ere they touched the water, 4 gleams of light crossed the pool, and 4 quivering forms, with wide-spread tails and open mouths, leaped high out of the water. I struck, and after a brief struggle, landed too. From that moment the pool was literally alive with eager fish. The deep dark water actually effervesced, stirred into bubbles and foam. 6 trout did I see at once in mid-air, in zealous rivalry to seize the coveted flies. 15 successive casts were made, and 23 trout lay flapping on the bottom of the boat. But of them all none would weigh over 3/4 of a pound. Yet had I seen fish rise which must have balanced twice that weight. I turned to John and said, "Why don't some of those large ones take the fly?" Presently, responded he. "The little ones are too quick for them. Cast away quick and sharp. Waste no time. Snap them off. Never mind the flies. And when you have cleared the surface of the small fry, you will see what lies at the bottom." I complied. At last, after some 40 had been flung down the stream, the rises became less frequent, the water less agitated, and partly to rest my wrist, and partly to give John time to adjust new and larger flies, I paused. In 5 minutes the current had cleared the pool of bubbles, and the dark water settled gradually into sullen repose. "Now," said John, "lengthen your line and cast at that patch of lily pads lying under the hemlock there, and if a large one rises, strike hard." I did as desired. The flies, in response to the twist of the pliant rod, rose into the air, darted forward, and pausing over the lily pads, lighted deftly on the water. Scarcely had their trail made itself visible on the smooth surface before a 2-pounder gleamed out of the dark depths, and rolling his golden side up to the light, closed his jaws upon the white moth. I struck. Stung by the pain, he flung himself with a mighty effort high in the air, hoping to fall upon the leader and snap the slender gut. Dropping the point of my rod, he came harmlessly down upon the slack. Recovering himself, he dove to the bottom, sulking. Bearing gradually upon his mouth, the only response I got was a sullen shaking, as a dog shakes a woodchuck. Fearing his sharp teeth would cut the already well-chafed snell, I bore stoutly upon him, lifting him bodily up toward the surface. When near the top, giving one desperate shake, he started. Back and forth, round and round that pool he flashed, a gleam of yellow light through the dark water, until at last, wearied and exhausted by his efforts, he rolled over upon his side and lay panting upon the surface. John deftly passed the landing net under him, and the next minute he lay amid his smaller brethren in the boat. I paused a moment to admire. A bluish-black trout he was, dotted with spots of bright vermilion. His fins, rosy as autumnal skies at sunset, were edged with a border of purest white. His tail was broad and thick, eyes prominent, mouth wide, and armed with briary teeth. A trout in color and build rarely seen, gamey and staunch. Noosing on a fresh fly in place of the one his teeth had mangled, I made ready for another cast. Expecting much, I was not prepared for what followed. Now, all ye lovers of bright waters and greensward, who lift a poor half-pounder with your big trolling rod and call it sport, listen and learn what befell one of your craft at sunset at the pool of the Nameless Creek. Nameless let it be, until she who most would have enjoyed it shall on some future sunset, floating amid the lilies, cast flies upon its tide. A backward motion of the tip, and a half-turn of the wrist, and the 3 flies leapt forward and ahead. Spreading themselves out as they reached the limit of the cast, like flakes of feathery snow they settled, wavering downward, when suddenly up out of the depth, cleaving the water in concert, 1 to each fly, 3 trout appeared. At the same instant, high in mid-air, their jaws closed on the barbed hooks. No shout from John was needed to make me strike. I struck so quick and strong that the leader twanged like a snapped bowstring, and the tip of the light rod flew down nearly to the reel. All 3 were hooked. 3 trout, weighing in the aggregate 7 pounds, held by a single hair on a 9-ounce rod, in a pool fringed with lily pads, 40 by 30 feet across. Then followed what to enjoy again I would ride thrice 200 miles. The contest, requiring nerve and skill on the fisher's part, was to keep the plunging fish out of the lily pads, in which, should they once become entangled, the gut would part like a thread of corn silk or a spider's gossamer line. Up and down, to and fro they glanced, the lithe rod bent like a coachman's whip to the unusual strain, and the leader sung as it cut through the water with the whir of a pointed bullet. At last, when at the farthest corner of the pool, they doubled short upon the line, and as one fish rushed straight for the boat. Fishermen know what that movement means. "Give 'em the butt, give 'em the butt," shouted John. "Smash your rod or stop 'em." Never before had I feared to thrust the butt of that rod out toward an advancing fish. But here were 3, each large enough to task a common rod, untired and frenzied with pain, rushing directly toward me. If I hesitated, it was but an instant, for the cry of John to "smash your rod or stop 'em" decided the matter. Gripping the extreme butt with one hand and clutching the reel with the other, I held them steadily out toward the oncoming fish. "Goodbye, old rod," I mentally exclaimed, and I saw the 3 gleaming forms dash under the boat. "Staunch as you are, you can't stand that." An instant, and the pressure came upon the reel. I gripped it tightly, not giving an inch. The pliant rod doubled itself up under the strain until the point of the tip was stretched a foot below the hand which grasped the butt, and the quivering lancewood lay across the distended knuckles. Nor fish nor rod could stand that pressure long. I could feel the fibers creep along the delicate shaft, and the mottled line, woven of choicest silk, attenuated under the strain, seemed like a single hair. I looked at John. His eyes were fastened upon the rod. I glanced down the stream, and even at the instant the 3 magnificent fish, forced gradually up by the pliancy of what they could not break, broke the smooth surface and lay with open mouths and gasping gills upon the tide. In trying to land the 3, the largest one escaped. The other 2 averaged 16 inches long. Within the space of 40 minutes, nearly 100 trout had been taken, 50 of which, varying from 1/4 of a pound to 2 pounds and a half in weight, lay along the bottom of the boat. The rest had been cast back into the water as unhooked by John. It was Saturday evening. The sun had gone down behind the western mountains, and amid the gathering shadows we sought a camp. We found one in the shape of a small bark lodge, which John himself had erected 14 years previous, when, in company with an old trapper, he camped one fall upon the shores of this lake. Kindling a fire in the long-neglected fireplace, we sat down to our supper under the clear sky, already thickly dotted with stars. From 7 in the morning until 8 in the evening we had been without food. I have an indistinct recollection that I put myself outside of 11 trout, and that John managed to surround 9 more. But there may be an error of 1 or 2 either way, for I am under the impression that my mental faculties were not in the best working condition at the close of the meal. John recollects distinctly that he cooked 21 fish, and but 3 could be found in the pan when we stopped eating, which he carefully laid aside that we might take a bite before going to sleep. Our meal was served up in 3 courses. The first course consisted of trout and pancakes, the second course, pancakes and trout, the third, fish and flapjacks. End of The Nameless Creek.